Welcome back to another episode of Is Fits Happy. I'm Luke,
And I'm Emma.
and this week we're discussing Chapter 7 of Ship of Destiny, Dragon Ship. What are you laughing at right away? We just started.
Dragging these ships.
All right. Well, we're with Wintrow on board of this dragon ship, and he has not woken up yet.
That's true. He is still in the process of healing himself through the guidance of the ship's dragon memories.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how it's really reminiscent of how he would get lost in creating the stained glass windows. And it feels really intrinsic on how to do this. Like it's when he was a kid and would stack blocks together. That's how easy this is. He just needed to be aware that it was possible.
Yeah, the tasks that faced him were simple and obvious, the work repetitive. He was only directing his body to do more swiftly what it would have eventually done on its own. The willing focus of his mind speeded the labor of his body. The rest of his life had dimmed to an absolute stillness. He considered nothing except repairing the animal he inhabited. It was rather like being in a small, cozy room while a great storm raged outside. "Enough," growled the dragon. Wintrow curled himself smaller before her irritation. "I am not finished," he begged. "No. The rest will take care of itself if you nourish your body and encourage it from time to time. I have delayed you for too long. You are strong enough now for all of us to confront what we are, and confront it we shall." It was like being seized and flung into the air. Like a panicky cat, he flailed and clawed in all directions, seeking something, anything to attach himself to. He found Vivacia.
Right. And before we get to that, I do want to just quick make a comment that I think it's good the dragon stopped him from going too far. I think this is the problem with later books when Fitz is being skill healed and then permanently makes his body regenerate faster. There is a line that you have to follow, and I think that the dragon knew that. It's unclear if this is because of the connection between the dragon memories and Wintrow, or if this is just something that dragons know anyway because they've been around for forever.
Yeah, I think it's just something that they know because that's part of them. Like the skill is part of their being, you know, or at least the dragon magic is related to the skill.
Right.
And that's part of their being.
Yeah. So I just found that really interesting. And again, it made me wonder, how skilled is Wintrow? Like if Wintrow would have been trained in the skill, would he be super powerful or?
No idea.
I don't know. So yeah, so he has started to acceleratedly heal himself and has made it safer for him and easier for him to heal, and now is flailing in the abyss towards Vivacia.
Mm-hmm. "Wintrow!" Her exclamation was not a verbal cry of joy, but a sudden pulse of connection as she discovered him again. So they're reunited, and there is joy in that. She knew everything about him, his pain, and agonized for him. She knew his thoughts, and when one falls in dreams, one always awakens before the impact. Not this time. Wintrow's awakening was the impact. Vivacia's love and devotion to him collided with his anguished knowledge of what she was. His thoughts were a mirror held to her corpse face. Once she had looked into it, she could not look aside. He was trapped in that contemplation with her and felt himself pulled down deeper and deeper into her despair. He plunged into the abyss with her. She was not Vivacia, not really. She had never been anything except the stolen life of a dragon. Her pseudo-life was fastened onto the remnants of the dragon's death. She had no real right to exist. Rainwild workers had split open the cocoon of the metamorphosing dragon. The germ of its life had been flung out to perish squirming on a cold stone floor, while the threads of memory and knowledge that had enclosed it were dragged off and cut up into planks to build live ships. So she's kind of confronting what she is, and Wintrow is kind of describing that, and Robin Hobb is describing what she is in those poetic terms that Wintrow always has.
Right. I I wonder if Wintrow wasn't so big on the morality of it all, would Vivacia be able to better grasp this concept and not fall into despair?
Well, I think she can grasp it, but she might have grasped it with more optimism if Wintrow wasn't such a
Right.
Yeah.
It just is really sad to me that her thoughts are, I don't deserve to be here. My life is not real because it was stolen from this dragon
Mm-hmm.
and whatever. But I think from what I feel of what these live ships are, that personality, Vivacia's personality, is just as much part of the dragon as the dragon memories are, because realistically, those memories, or that like dragon figure that talks to Wintrow and Vivacia, is just a building of memories of all the dragons before it. It never lived either. So,
Right.
I mean, I guess it lived as a serpent, but I don't know. How is that any
Mm-hmm.
more valid of a personality than Vivacia's? Like, why wouldn't that be the natural progression? And I don't know. So I feel bad for Vivacia. That's where my thoughts lie. But Wintrow instead sees it as against Saw or whatever. So
No,
really,
we can't blame it all on Wintrow. Like, I will say
No,
that
yeah.
if Althea was here instead, she'd probably be like, yeah, this is horrible, but you are Vivacia and you're mine and you're alive here and it's fine. You
Yeah.
know, like a little bit more pragmatic. But we can't blame it all on Wintrow's feelings because Vivacia has struggled with herself and her identity and who she is and if she's alive and what she can experience. So there is something there with an absolute knowledge from your partner being like, hey, you actually shouldn't be alive, technically. This is how you came to be. I mean, that kind of answers some of her questions.
Right.
So
I will say, though, as a rebuttal, why is it that she fights with if she's should be alive or not?
So you're blaming Wintrow for everything then that she's feeling, basically?
I mean, I don't think she would have felt this way at all if it had not been for Wintrow.
I mean,
Wintrow's
there's
introspective.
a lot of things that had to happen to get to this point.
Oh, for sure. No, definitely. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, Wintrow he's 100% at fault. But I will say, if Althea would have been on board the whole time and not Wintrow, I think Vivacia would have had a little bit different of a personality. She wouldn't have been so introspective of who she is and what that means and the morality of that. I think she would have just been...
Althea doesn't like to talk about that stuff.
No, and I think she would have been more secure and she's a Vestrit and my name's Vivacia and this is who I am. I think Wintrow's doubt of what Vivacia is from the beginning has built this seed of Vivacia not knowing who she is and feeling as though she's not worthy to be there.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I don't know. I'm not trying to like cancel Wintrow.
Well, she is confronted with that thought, and eventually Vivacia had awakened from, the past, from building out all of these planks and building a ship and soaking up lives. And the proud ship and her glorious figurehead were not truly part of the Vestrit family. No, hers was a life stolen. She was half a being, less than half, a makeshift creature cobbled together out of human wills and buried dragon memories. Sexless, deathless, and in the long run, meaningless. A slave. They had used the stolen memories of a dragon to create a great wooden slave for themselves. See, and that sounds like the dragon thoughts coloring Wintrow's thoughts there.
Right.
To me. So it's kind of like a whole anger at what they did to the dragon, kind of coloring Wintrow's, should this thing be alive?
Yeah.
So it's all, as they argued in the past chapters, they're all connected and they're all kind of mingled together into one being right now.
Right. No, I definitely think there's some of that. And obviously this is the relationship that helped form Vivacia's part of the consciousness. So that's just who she is now. I think that the three of them together are having this kind of downward spiral of, should Vivacia even be here?
And the dragon's just sitting by, smiling.
Yeah, because this means that she might get a chance to have a turn at being alive.
So Vivacia screams out, and Wintrow wakes up into full consciousness from that, rolls out of the bunk, and starts walking to the figurehead, ignoring Etta, who is keeping watch, and saying, hey, Wintrow, like, you can't. Wait, you're not well. Like, lie down. And he just goes. He beelines for it. He heard noises from the captain's stateroom, Kennit shouting for his crutch and a light. Etta, damn you, where are you when I need you? But Wintrow did not pause for that either. He limped naked, save for a sheet, just up to the figurehead. He can only focus on this turmoil that Vivacia is feeling right now. Please, it was not your fault. It was never your fault, Vivacia. The figurehead tore at herself. Her great wooden fingers tangled in her lush black curls and strove to snatch them out of her head. Her fingernails raked her cheeks and dug at her eyes. Not me, she cried to the night sky. Never me at all. Oh, great Sa, what an obscene jest I am. What an abomination in your sight. Let me go, then. Let me be dead. So Genghis is here being like, you know, what ails you? What ails the ship? Like, what's going on? That old sailor.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if you were
kind of scary,
any other sailor besides Kennit and Wintrow, this would be a terrifying thing to happen because Vivacia's been pretty temperamental, or not temperamental, been pretty
even-keeled.
Yeah, even-keeled. She's been very chill and a little moody maybe sometimes, which is understandable, but like ultimately this magic ship has been nice, and all of a sudden she's like
screaming,
scraping at her face, saying she doesn't deserve to be alive, she wants to be dead.
Yeah, and the scrapes and the furrows that her nails are making and the hair that she's pulling out immediately is just regrowing back and getting the chunks that she has in her hand are just being absorbed into her hands. Like it's just nothing is happening, but you can see damage for a brief second.
Yeah. Creepy.
Mm-hmm. So Wintrow flings himself into Vivacia, seeking to comfort and to calm her, but the dragon was waiting. She rebuffed him as effortlessly as she wrapped and held Vivacia in her embrace. Hers was the spirit that defied the ship's desire to die. No, not after all the years of repression, not all the ages of silence and stillness. I will not be dead. If this be the only life we can have, then we shall have it. Be still, little slave, share this life with me, or no, none at all. So Wintrow was transfixed, kind of watching this struggle, and he can't do anything. He can just watch as Vivacia struggles to die, and the dragon struggles to either hold them together into one being or to bury her so she can't have control of this.
Right.
And Vivacia's trying to beseech Wintrow, like, hey, help us die. We can't live like this. This is an abomination. Please, let us just end. What else was there for them? This endless sense of wrong, this horrible burden of stolen life? Would he choose that?
It's really sad. I hate that Vivacia feels as though the only way forward is to end. Also, to me, it's a little confusing that she can just choose to die, considering Paragon wants nothing more than to do that and has not once been able to go through whatever it is that this is that is happening here. So that part a little bit confuses me, because you'd think if this was that easy of a conclusion to come to, any of the live ship would have already, like, live ships would have done it, especially Paragon.
We don't know if she actually can. She just wants to, and she's going towards something, but we don't know if that she would actually die.
Yeah.
For all we know, Paragon could have tried this already.
Yeah, that's
whatever she's doing. So
that's fair. I don't know. So that part is really interesting and confusing to me, I guess. As part of this, I'm just looking at it like, oh, why would that be an option? Why would she think it was an option? Why would she think that she could go towards an abyss? And why would she want to drag Wintrow with her? Like, isn't there love there? Isn't there? I
think she's in a struggle there, right? And she like maybe needs his help to do it against the dragon who's trying to stop her. I don't know.
I guess. I don't know.
But Kennit is coming up on deck, and this is the most disheveled that Wintrow has ever seen, the captain. He's wondering what's going on, and Wintrow thinks that, yeah, he can feel us. He is starting to bond with us. He senses something of what is going on, and it frightens him. Kennit's sitting there with, a half-tucked in nightshirt billowing about him. One foot was bare. He's got nothing going on as the put-together pirate captain that he always presents.
Yeah. So it's definitely like a wild scene for everyone, not just Wintrow, but Wintrow especially, seeing this normally put-together captain, like you said, so disheveled.
And he's saying, "What do you do, boy?" And then his voice changed from anger, and he stared past Wintrow in horror. "God of fishes, what have you done to my ship?" Wintrow turned to the figurehead. Vivacia had twisted to stare back at the growing mob of disturbed sailors on the foredeck. One man shrieked aloud as her eyes went suddenly lambent green. The color of her eyes swirled like a whirlpool, while at the center was blackness darker than any night. Humanity left her face. Her black tresses blowing in the night breeze were more like a writhing nest of serpents. The teeth she bared at them, in a parody of a smile, were too white. "If I cannot win," the lips gave voice to the dragon's thought, "then no one shall." Slowly she turned away from them, her arms lifted wide as if to embrace the night sea. Then slowly she brought them back to clasp the hull of the ship behind her. "Wintrow! Wintrow, aid me!" Vivacia pleaded only in his mind. The figurehead's mouth and her voice were no longer at Vivacia's command. "Die with me," she begged him. Almost he did. Almost he followed her into that abyss, but at the last instant he could not. "I want to live," he heard himself cry out. "Please, please let us live." He thought for an instant that his words weakened her resolve to die, and a strange silence followed that. Wintrow became aware that somewhere a sailor gabbled out a child's prayer, but another smaller sound caught his ears. It was a running, brittle sound, like the noise of cracking ice on the surface of a lake when one ventures out too far. "She's gone," breathed Etta. "Vivacia's gone." It was so. Even in the poor light of the lantern, the change was obvious. All color and semblance of life had drained from the figurehead. Gray as a tombstone was the wood of her back and hair. No breath of life stirred her. Her carved locks were frozen and immune to the breeze's fingering touch. Her skin looked as weathered as an aging fence. Wintrow groped after her with his mind. He caught a fading trail of her despair, like a vanishing scent in the air. Then even that was gone, as if some tight door had closed between them. And he can't sense the dragon either. And he's alone with his thoughts now.
Yeah, for the first
Suddenly
time in a
alone.
long time.
Mm-hmm. He sagged against Etta, and his new skin screamed at her touch, but he was too weak to even flinch away. And Etta's just looking at Kennit, and her gaze mourned. And Wintrow's eyes follows her, and he had never seen a man look so grief-stricken. So Kennit's not in a good spot here. Wintrow's not in a good spot here. Vivacia's not in a good spot here.
Yeah.
Things have happened very quickly for the whole crew and the whole ship.
Yeah.
There's lines that Wintrow never noticed graven into Kennit's face. His glossy black hair and mustaches look shocking against his sallow skin. Vivacia's passing diminished Kennit in a way that the loss of his leg had not. Before Wintrow's eyes, the man aged.
Do you think that the despair Kennit is feeling is because without a working live ship, he has not fulfilled his goal of being the perfect pirate king? Or is it due to some actual affection he has towards Vivacia and some like feel of despair that this could happen to a live ship?
I think a couple things. Primarily, I think you're correct in the first one that having a live ship is what he needs. Because remember, you need a live ship to go up the river to get Ygritte's treasures.
Right.
And he knows where those are. And he's the only one alive who does.
Right.
2, no longer having a live ship really diminishes his reputation,
Mm-hmm.
and he can no longer help to erase Ygritte's, I guess, legacy,
Right.
which is what he also plans to do. But also, this question that he asks next, is she dead? Can a live ship die? His eyes pleaded that it not be so. He is thinking about how the Paragon did not die or could not die, even though
Right.
he like commanded it. So I think there's something of his past being like, I thought live ships couldn't die. How could this have happened to me? I was, destined to be greater or something like that. Just kind of like a disbelief.
Yeah. I guess I was also wondering if maybe that, especially, it's not even about his feelings for Vivacia, but the thought of Paragon maybe being dead somewhere,
Yeah, could be.
that he's really saddens him of like, oh, Paragon might actually be dead. Because I feel like there is that bond Wintrow talks about that is part of, being bonded to a live ship. And as of right now, Wintrow doesn't feel it at all. I'm wondering if that's the case for Kennit whenever he's separated from Paragon. I don't know. It's hard to tell because Wintrow has been away from Vivacia before. He's been off Vivacia's deck, but he's never talked about this feeling of not being able to reach her,
Right.
like of being separate from her. So I'm wondering if even if you're away, you still have that bond in some way, like the skill where it like just gets thinner, not necessarily it's gone.
It's not something that you really notice.
Yeah. I don't know.
Could be. Well, Kennit is kind of losing it. He's like, you can't be gone. I won't allow it. And everyone is looking at him with sympathy and grief for their captain. And Etta breaks that silence, saying, hey, you and Wintrow need to come down below deck and talk about it. There's nothing that we can do here. Together, you two can puzzle out what is to be done next. Wintrow clearly saw what she was doing. The captain's attitude was rattling the crew. It was best he was out of their sight until he recovered. So Wintrow chimes in with her, like, please, let's go. Kennit glanced at them as if they were strangers. A sudden flatness came to his eyes as he mastered himself. Very well, take him below and see to him. His voice was devoid of every emotion. Get back to your posts, he muttered at them. For an instant they did not respond. A few faces showed sympathy for their captain, but most stared confusedly, as if they did not know the man. Then, now, he snapped. He did not raise his voice, but the command in it sent his men scrabbling to obey. In an instant, the foredeck was empty, save for Wintrow, Etta, and Kennit. Kennit is moving awkward, and Wintrow says to Etta, like, go help him, I can manage. So Etta goes and helps Kennit, and Kennit doesn't even say anything about her help, just leans on her and lets her help him.
Right.
And they go down below.
And a little bit, I think that this was part of Wintrow's plan to be alone with Vivacia one more time, because he immediately goes over to the foredeck and says Vivacia and quests for her once more now that it's quiet and there's nobody else around, and still he feels nothing. This is, I feel like, a really sad chapter. It's really sad to have this happen, and I feel so bad for Vivacia for going through this, but I also feel bad for Wintrow for losing this connection. I think
something he rebelled against a lot in the earlier books, but this sense of loss that he's feeling is like, oh, she was a strength that I drew upon, and now I'm alone.
Yeah. Like he wasn't feeling as much pain when they were connected, and then as soon as she's gone, the pain is back. And it's, I don't know,
and
like
not even just physical pain, but just
it just, like, they were helping each other probably in ways that neither of them really understood or were doing purposefully.
Yeah.
But they were, and they were part of like a team. They had that familial bond, and now it's just gone. And it is really heartbreaking, and I can see why it would be really hard for Wintrow.
Now we have another big development here when he says, Sa, he whispered, knowing that he should be able to reach out for his god as solace. Sa had always been there for him, long before he had boarded the ship and bonded with her. Once, he had been certain he was destined to be a priest. Now, as he reached out with a word to touch the awe of the divine, he realized that the name on his lips was truly a prayer that Vivacia be restored to him. He felt shamed. Had his ship then replaced his god? Did he truly believe he could not go on without her? He knelt suddenly on the darkened deck, but not to pray. His hands groped over the wood. Here, the stain should be here where his blood had joined her timbers and united him with her in a bond he shared with no other. But when his maimed hand found his own bloody handprint, it was by sight, not touch, for he felt nothing under his palm save the fine texture of the wizardwood deck. He felt nothing at all. Wintrow? Etta had come back for him. She stood looking at him. I'm coming, he replied, and lurched to his feet. So again, he's kind of realizing how much he came to rely on her and how much he just not really had forsaken Sa, but just took more solace in the physical fact and conversation of Vivacia rather than praying all the time or relying on Sa's guidance. So Wintrow is still like has that realization, but isn't going back to Sa. Is just like, please, I just want Vivacia back.
Yeah, I think that's a big change in him. I think first time we meet Wintrow, meeting himself now would be very disappointed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is something to be said that I think Wintrow did feel as though there was a connection between him and Sa, and it has always been this thing of he feels that Sa opens his eyes to the divine and the ordinary, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has multiple scenes where he looks at things in a different light because Sa shows him that. And I think that feeling is amplified with Vivacia, and that's the thing that he associated with Sa, but it's stronger because it's actually so physical and connected and
Right.
living, I guess. And so, I don't know, I just found that really interesting that he has this realization that maybe Vivacia has replaced Sa in a way, but I don't think fully she has. I think he's still,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still religious, like, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he does want her back and he would do anything.
We switch perspectives to Etta's point of view here, and Etta, Wintrow, and Kennit are sitting at the table in the captain's quarters. They had some wine, and Etta is looking at Wintrow and describing how horrible his wounds still kind of look and how in pain he must be. But she ends it with saying, but worst was the dull look in his eyes. They mirrored the loss and abandonment in Kennit's. The pirate sat across from Wintrow, his dark hair in disarray, his shirt half-buttoned. Kennit, always so careful of his own appearance, seemed to have forgotten it entirely. She could barely stand to look at the man she had loved. In the years she had known him, he had first been simply her customer, then the man she longed for. When he had carried her off, she had thought nothing could bring her more joy. The night he had told her he cared for her life had been transformed. She talks about how she had watched him grow from just captain to a king and somebody who also can do miracles, maybe.
Right.
And she had mourned his greatness and all that great destiny Sa seemed to have chosen for him, because she thought, well, he had soared and she had been jealous of it for fear it might steal him from her. But this was 1,000 times worse. No battle, no injury, no storm had ever unmanned him. Never until tonight had she seen him uncertain or at a loss. Even now he sat straight at the table drinking his brandy neat, his shoulders square and his hands steady. Nevertheless, something had gone out of him. She had seen it leave him, seen it flow away with the life of the ship. He was now as wooden as Vivacia had become. She feared to touch him lest she discover his flesh was as hard as unyielding as the deck. Etta is afraid of both her friend and her love.
Right.
Afraid for them, I guess, not of them.
Yes. I think it would be hard because she's never seen Kennit unsure. We know as readers and rereaders that Kennit feels unsure a lot of the time, and that like there's a lot of doubt in his mind, and he regularly has these bouts of like, my luck has forsaken me.
Right,
I don't know what
yeah.
I'm doing. I'm gonna die. But he is really careful about crafting an image of knowing what's going on, of being in control.
Getting to the breaking point where he just doesn't care about that is
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I think it does let us know. I think I've had this question a lot over the books of how convincing is Kennit actually to other people,
And
because he
is.
thinks he's pretty convincing, but he's not necessarily a reliable narrator.
Mhm.
So having this be the first time that Etta's ever seen him disheveled or unsure, I think that goes to show that even if not everything he does is as smooth as he thinks it is, he does have a really successful fake persona
Yeah.
that he presents to everyone, even Etta, who is with him a lot of the time.
Yeah. He clears his throat and Wintrow's eyes snap back to him. So, you think she is dead? How? What killed her? And Wintrow clears his throat, and now it's his turn to make that sound and be kind of almost afraid to start talking. And
Yes.
he's like, I did. That is what I knew killed her. Or drove her so deep inside herself that she cannot find a way back to us. Maybe she simply realized she had always been dead. Perhaps it was only my belief otherwise that kept her alive. So Kennit's getting a little angry. He sets down his glass pretty sharply and says, talk sense, because, yeah, this makes zero sense to anybody who hasn't been a reader of these books.
Right. Who doesn't know?
What do you mean she's already been dead? What do you mean your belief killed her? What do you mean your knowledge? Like, what's going on? So Wintrow does explain that she had always been dead and that she had been borrowing life from this dragon memories, and somehow these live ships fit into the life cycle of dragons and serpents.
And I think this is interesting because it isn't necessarily how this works, because Vivacia isn't borrowing memories from the dragon to be alive. She has absorbed the memories of the Vestrits to become who she is.
And is burying the dragon memories.
Yeah, so it's not quite right, but it's what Wintrow understands with what little knowledge he has. So it is interesting to see that. And it's interesting to me that Wintrow just assumes that she just is dead and that there's no way that that's actual life. I think that's something that he is sure in, that she is dead.
Yeah.
She's a corpse. She's dead.
Because all in his mind, all he can feel is the connection he had with the serpent and the talks and the memories he got from the dragon.
Right.
And their perspective is that, yeah, those live ships will be dead. Like,
Yeah,
the dragon should be born. They are the most majestic creatures.
Right. And the dragon is dead. Therefore, this is dead.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I find that really interesting, because is not life whatever Vivacia has going on? Like, why can't that be life too? And I don't know. It's such an interesting concept, right? Like, what is life? How do you tell if something's alive? What's more worth living? I don't know. I don't know if I can answer any of those questions, but it's interesting that unknowingly to Wintrow, he has accepted the dragon point of view that if it's not a dragon, it's dead.
Right. So he explains to Kennit his connection with that serpent and freeing She Who Remembers Another Island. He explains to Kennit what he knows about the serpents and the dragons. Somehow they have been trapped in their sea form, unable to return to their changing grounds to become full dragons. I could not grasp it all. I saw images, I thought her thoughts, but it is hard to translate that into human terms. So he also explains to Kennit that when he came back on board Vivacia, he knew that the live ship was meant to be a dragon. He doesn't know exactly how, But that's why he kept to himself and didn't wake up, because he wanted to keep that knowledge from Vivacia. Because he knew that the Rainwell traders cut the dragon's cocoon into planks. They killed the dragon and cut her husk into planks to build a live ship. Again, Kennit is like, you make no sense.
Right. Which, fair. This is a crazy conspiracy.
This is more like denial rather than actual talk sense.
Yes. Yeah. But I do want to ask, how does Wintrow know as soon as he's back on board Vivacia that she was supposed to be a dragon before the dragon memories told him if She Who Remembers doesn't even know?
I think it's with those dragon memories and with the mucus he still had on him and the connection and touching wizard wood. I think he can get that, you know?
Okay.
Magic.
Yeah.
Dragon memories. Whatever you want to explain it away with.
Okay.
So Kennit is in denial here. He lifts up the brandy bottle, and for one frightening instant, Etta thought he would dash out the boy's brains with it. She saw in Wintrow's face that he feared it too, but the lad did not flinch. Instead, Kennit poured brandy into his glass. A tiny wave of it slopped over the edge of his glass onto the white tablecloth. The pirate ignored it. He lifted the glass and gulped it down in anger. His anger is too great, Etta thought suddenly to herself. There is something else here, something even deeper and more painful than Vivacia's loss. And what she's sensing is, I think, Paragon. Is because Kennit has to connect all of this information about a live ship to Paragon as well.
Right.
So the only friend he ever had, the only family he was kind of left with, was also dead the whole time and supposed to be something else and never really alive. So I think Kennit has to come to that realization too. It's just like, okay, so my family members are all dead because he doesn't really count his mom for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyway, Wintrow does continue on here. Basically just telling him like, this is all I know. I can only tell you what I believe.
Right.
And if it were not true, I do not think Vivacia would have believed it so deeply that she died. Some part of her always knew. A dragon always slept within her. Our brush with the serpent awakened it. The dragon was furious to discover what it had become. When I was unconscious, it demanded of me that I help it share the ship's life. The dragon woke me today. She woke me and she forced me into full contact with Vivacia. He explains that he'd held himself back, but the dragon was intent on having Vivacia and everyone confront that truth.
Right. It had been long enough without confronting it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really interesting point as well, that the dragon is kind of orchestrating this whole thing.
Right.
And I am curious. Wintrow seems to think it's the poisons from the serpent that woke the dragon, but Vivacia has been talking about having dragon memories for a while now.
Yeah.
But
actually getting the mucus from She Who Remembers on your hands.
Yeah.
That's a little bit something different, you know?
Okay.
She's had serpents nudge her before, right? She's had serpents release toxins, but that's a little bit different. I don't know if the figurehead counts as different than the hull. I don't think so.
Right.
But it's different to get like She Who Remembers. Direct memories and connection to your mind. And I'm guessing the She Who Remembers memories made the dragon wake up and remember and be a little bit more active.
Interesting. I was thinking maybe that She Who Remembers, that poison just gave more strength to the dragon, not necessarily that it woke the dragon. I feel like the dragon has always been there and aware and trying to make her presence known to Vivacia and try to I think my belief, I guess, in reading this and thinking about how this would work is that memories are power, right? Like we know that names are power, but also memories. And I think because the dragon memories are buried so deep, it doesn't have as much power, so to speak, because it's not being remembered as much. Like it's
Yeah.
still there somewhere. It's still trying, but it's not to the forefront, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always been aware of what's happening. I don't think it just woke up. I think it's been there. And that's why when Vivacia was thinking like, who am I? What's going on? I think that gave a little bit more strength to the memories. And that's why she was seeing images of her flying or whatever the other images are where she's like, I feel like something to do with, I don't know, like I'm a dragon. So I feel as though this is Wintrow's understanding because Wintrow didn't know it existed before then, but I think she's been there. I think that would make sense with Paragon as well because Paragon's aware of his dragons and I don't think he touched. I guess he was upside down in water and
Yeah, he
was
has
closer
had
with
serpents talking to him for a while.
But that also does not discount my theory that it's about memories because that would bring more power to the memories that had been buried.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just a thought that I had that maybe all of the dragons are there somewhere, aware of what's going on. They just don't have enough power, so to speak, to do anything about it.
I think of them as not aware, personally.
Okay.
My theory is that they're more in hibernation or sleeping. So, like, they're a part of the being, and maybe their subconscious is keeping track of what's going on, but their identity as themselves is not actively like fighting back or trying to rise up to the top or anything like that. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay.
But I think either could work, and we don't really have experience one way or the other, or knowledge one way or the other, which is true.
Okay. So you think it's kind of like the stone dragons?
Kind of.
That sort of hibernation where they're there.
Kind of, but there's nothing quite like it because it's a
fair.
being like sleeping within another one who's having experiences. So
Fair.
I don't know. It feels like it would be even a more diminished relationship of like Fitz dreaming into Night Eyes, you know?
Okay, sure.
Even more diminished. Like you can be aware of kind of what's going on sometimes and maybe, you know, touch the same memories, but they're buried so deeply that they're not really conscious of who they are.
Yeah.
And what they're doing.
Oh.
So yeah. I think like sometimes those dreams can cross, which is why Althea had dreams of being on wing before Vivacia woke up.
Right.
Like the first chapters. And why the dragon memories, or why She Who Remembers specifically, would recall a sense of identity, because that's what She Who Remembers does. And her purpose is like, hey, I'm going to give you back exactly our whole heritage.
Yeah.
So that's my theory on it. But I think both of them are about the same.
Yeah.
Just small different details.
Yeah. I just had another thought. Sorry to go on another tangent right away. But because you brought up Night Eyes, I was thinking about how when Night Eyes dies, he's still there.
Right.
Like that old Ralph tries to explain to Fitz that Black Ralph, thank you. Tries to explain to Fitz that whenever you are wit bonded with somebody, even after they pass, they stay on. And we know that that's really the wolf that's staying, not just a memory, because he goes to B's consciousness.
Yes. It's different with Fitz, though, from what I understand, because Black Rolf was always talking about, hey, you are way too closely entwined.
Right.
And you have been way too closely entwined. And with the sharing essences of being close by and being like a part of the world, you know, like how others are created and elderlings are created, they're just by each other. With Fitz and Night Eyes literally sharing bodies the same way that Fitz and the Fool literally shared bodies too.
Right.
Their essences got mingled, so I think pieces of themselves did get stuck inside each other. They're more one being. And yeah, I think wit partners do have a little bit of that because they share minds or that bond.
Mhm.
But I think Wolf Father Night Eyes
Yeah.
is way more strongly in Fitz than any other wit partner should be.
Okay.
And I think it's more what Black Rolf is talking about. Yeah, maybe you can hear echoes of what they're saying, but Night Eyes literally has his own independent thoughts and and teaching moments,
Right. I don't know. Well, anyway, that was making me think like maybe there's something connected with the way that dragons
Mm,
like exist and this whole
yeah,
idea of like
it
what
could be
is
that.
life if
Yeah.
not memory. And I don't know. So I thought that was really interesting. It just made me think about, oh, I wonder how that's connected to what we
Right,
see
yeah.
with wit partners where they stay on even after death.
I wonder if we would even, like, if we asked Robin Hobb these similarities, like, oh, did you ever think about, magic in the world and like the sleeping dragon subconscious inside,
Yeah.
buried by the live ship memories is similar to Night Eye's buried memories in Fitz's mind later on
Mhm.
after he dies. I wonder if she would even be like, oh yeah, I thought of that. Or it would be like, oh, that is cool.
Yeah. Right. That's just like a coincidence. Yeah.
Right.
Like a subconscious thing she did, not.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think it is similar, and I think it does, whether or not it's intentional, it does speak to some sort of through line with the magic and how it works in the world.
Mhm.
So that's cool.
Well, anyway, back to our conversation
back
about
to the chapter.
Vivacia. Wintrow explains that she's always been kind of a dragon, and that this dragon has been living inside her the whole time. Kennit is kind of in denial, but Etta kind of believes it. The ship's presence had jangled against her nerves ever since she had first come aboard. Now it made sense. There had always been a dragon inside Vivacia. Moreover, Kennit knew it. Etta had seen the man lie before. She had heard him lie to her. Never before had she seen him lie to himself. He was not very good at it. It showed in the minute shaking of his hand as he poured himself yet another jot of brandy. As he returned his glass to the table, he announced abruptly, "For what I must do, I need a live ship. I have to bring her back to life." "I don't think you can," Wintrow said softly. "So swiftly you lose your faith in me. Was it only a few days ago that you believed I was chosen of Sa? Only a few weeks ago that you spoke out for me to all the people, saying I was destined to be king for them, if they could be worthy of me? Ha! Such a tiny, brittle faith, to snap at the first test. Listen to me, Wintrow Vestrit. I have walked the shores of the other's island, and their soothsaying has confirmed my destiny. I have calmed a storm with a word. I have commanded a sea serpent, and it bent its will to mine. Only a day ago I called you back from the very door of death, you ungrateful wretch. Now you sit there and scoff at me. You say that I cannot restore my own ship to life. How dare you? Do you seek to undermine my reign? Would the one I have treated as a son lift a scorpion's sting to me now?" Etta remains sitting and just kind of watches all the emotions on Wintrow's face.
Yeah, I want to pause here because I want to go back. There's a couple things I want to talk about quickly. The first is that why is Kennit so adamant that there cannot be dragons in live ships? That they're like, this is not true. Wintrow is just making this up.
It's a denial to himself. Like Etta says, he's lying to himself here, and he deep down believes it. I don't know. I think it's just something that he didn't know about Paragon. Like, how could I be so close to somebody and not know everything?
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
I like that. And then my other question, or maybe statement, is I'm a little bit confused by this whole Etta knew the whole time. Yes, there was a dragon in Vivacia, because it's like, okay, well, Etta's the furthest away from knowing anything about live ships of the
Right.
three here.
Yeah.
And so it's odd that she'd be like, yes, it's true. Even I know it's true. I just sensed it from the beginning.
I think it's one for readers to just have someone to side with and be like, oh, yeah, she knows the truth. Two, I think it's a confirmation of, I don't like Vivacia.
Okay, yeah.
And 3, she trusts her friend,
Okay,
Wintrow.
touche.
And I think that she knows that Wintrow believes it. And therefore it's like, oh, okay, that fits.
He's smart
Yeah.
and he doesn't really lie. So, okay. But yeah, so we have this whole rant with Kennit of,
His paranoia peeking through again, like, how dare
yeah,
you not believe that I can do the impossible when you
yeah,
were supposed to be my prophet and tell everybody I can do the impossible.
right. And I think it's really interesting that one of the examples he uses is that he brought Wintrow from the brink of death. Wintrow, like 5, maybe 10 minutes ago, just talked about how the dragon inside the ship helped him learn how to heal himself, and that's why he woke up. So, no, you didn't call him back from death. We know for a fact from Wintrow's account that you had nothing to do with that. It was all the dragon inside Vivacia. So I thought that was kind of funny that that's in there.
Mhm.
And nobody calls it out. Nobody's like, no. They're all like, yeah, you're right. You did do that. I don't know. Feed the delusions.
Yeah, so Etta's watching Wintrow's face here, and it awed her that she could read them so clearly. When had she let her guard down so far as to know another so well? Worse, she suddenly hurt for him. He, like her, was caught between love for the man they had followed so long and fear for the powerful being he was becoming. She's pleading silently with Wintrow, please don't anger him. Once you anger him, he will not hear you.
I have a question. What are Etta's feelings towards Wintrow? Do you think that she, unknowingly to herself even, has some sort of romantic feelings for Wintrow? Or is this truly just like a friend bond?
I think it's truly like a friend bond on Etta's point of view, but like it like close friend bond because like she's, as she says in here, she's literally never let her guard down to have friends before or anybody
Right.
she knows. So I think Wintrow's the only other person she's allowed herself to bond with at all.
Okay, yeah.
Besides Kennit.
Right. But even with Kennit, she kind of holds herself away from him.
Mhm.
Like she's not worthy of him or whatever. She tells herself. But yeah, I don't know. I just think, especially this chapter, it felt like maybe there's underlying feelings. And I don't want to like, women and men can't be friends. It just, the way that she cares about Wintrow is so caring. And it almost feels like a normal relationship feeling, but she doesn't know what that is, so she can't admit it to herself. She's like, oh no, we're just friends. I don't know, just a thought that I had.
She's watching as Wintrow takes a deep breath with tears in his eyes and says, in truth, you have treated me better than my own father ever did. When you came aboard Vivacia, I expected death at your hands. Instead, you have challenged me every day to find my life and live it. Kennit, you are more than captain to me. I do believe without question that you are a tool of Sa for the working of his will. We all are, of course, but I think he has reserved for you a destiny larger than most. Nevertheless, when you speak of calling Vivacia back to life, I do not doubt you, my captain. Rather, I doubt that she was ever truly alive in the sense that you and I are. Vivacia was a fabrication, a creature composed of the memories of my forebears. The dragon was once real, but if Vivacia was never real and the dragon died in her creation, who remains for you to call back to life? Briefer than the flick of a serpent's tongue, uncertainty flashed over Kennit's face. Had Wintrow seen it? The young man remained still. His question still hung in the air between them. And in disbelief, Etta watches his hands creep over closer to Kennit's, as if he would touch Kennit's hand. In what? Sympathy? Oh, Wintrow, do not err so badly as that. Kennit is just kind of still. He gave no sign of anything really happening. Slowly, he lifts the brandy bottle and pours out another shot into his own glass. And then he reaches over to Wintrow's, pours some in there, and says, drink it. Perhaps it will put a bit of fire in your blood. Then do not tell me that I cannot do this thing. Instead, tell me how you will help me. For she was alive, Wintrow. We all know that. So whatever it was that animated her, that is what we will call back. So Kennit comes to a decision.
Yeah.
He is going to revive Vivacia. He is going to bring something of life back to this ship because he needs a live ship.
Yeah. I wonder if this is a little bit of the stubbornness of like, everything has to work out. You have to trust your luck. And if you doubt it, then it goes away. So I just have to trust that I can do this thing. Or if it's like, I don't know. I had another option, but it disappeared for me. Maybe that's just what I think it is. It's him being like, oh, gotta trust my luck. I can do it.
Kennit laughs after Wintrow again expresses doubt. Etta is kind of chilled by that because it sounds like a man being tortured who has run out of screams and just laughs instead. Okay, Etta, thank you for
Great.
putting your torture thoughts again to the book.
Yep.
But here Kennit says the interesting thing to new readers. You doubt me, Wintrow. That is because you do not know what I know. This is not the first live ship I have ever known. They do not die so easily. That I promise you. Now drink up that brandy, there's a good lad. Etta, where are you? What ails you that you've set out a near-empty bottle on the table? Fetch another, and quickly. So lots of drink that they're having. And we get the little nugget that he has known other live ships.
Yeah. And I think this is pretty big for first-time readers.
Mm-hmm. First time we hear that in the books, and if you can piece together things, maybe you can piece together that he had been aboard Paragon.
Right. I think up until now, it's pretty obvious that, like, there are a lot more hints that lead you to knowing that Paragon was taken over by Ygritte and that Kennit was...
Potentially. We don't know he was taken over by Ygritte.
It does...
There are hints there, but it's not...
There is the talk of how Paragon has that stamp in his chest that's Ygritte's symbol.
The 7-pointed star.
Yes.
But is that star ever associated with Ygritte?
It has to be, because I remember it as Ygritte's symbol.
Yeah, but is that because it's a reread?
Maybe, I don't know.
It might be mentioned with the fact that Kennit's first brand or whatever was a 7-pointed star.
Yeah.
And he talks about his trauma with Ygritte, but those two things might not be mentioned in the same breath.
Okay.
So I think the hints are there.
Okay.
And you can piece them together. Same with that one smuggler saying Ygritte was thought to have a live ship that was painted and just told to hold still in port. And Brashen doesn't believe it because, like, what pirate had a live ship?
Right.
So I think, like, the hints are laid down there.
Okay.
And I think with this, you can kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
But I think Kennit being a Ludluck is still a secret that is unable to be pieced together. It just kind of feels like, oh, maybe Kennit was on board a live ship.
Right. Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's hard to remember what's knowledge that I know because I've read these before.
Yeah. I mean, same. I could be leaving out some things because I want to err on the side of caution of what is available for new readers.
Right.
I don't remember.
No, it's definitely hard. I mean, to be fair, though, even as being a rereader, there are stuff that I don't remember, like this whole chapter. I feel like I wiped it from my memory. So, yeah, I don't know.
We switch over to Kennit's point of view where he's like, yeah, I drunk the boy under the table and I sent Etta to look after him so that'll occupy them. I'll have some time to myself. With a ponderously careful tread, he made his way out onto the deck. He was perhaps just the slightest bit drunk himself.
Perhaps.
Yes, perhaps.
He just gave a really big detail about himself to Kennit or to Etta and Wintrow, but definitely maybe tipsy.
He makes a slow circuit of the ship, nodding to some of the crew, and makes his way up to the figurehead. Vivacia was his ship, and he would call her back to life. And when he did, she would know he was her master, and she would be his in a way she had never been Wintrow's. His own live ship, just as he had always deserved. Damn right he had always deserved his own live ship. Nothing was going to take her from him now. Nothing. So he gets up onto the foredeck and starts talking to her. "Good evening, sweet sea lady. A fine night tonight, and a good wind at our backs. What more could we ask?" He listened to her stillness, just as if she had replied. She kind of is silent, of course, but
Right.
he continues the small talk and just talks about Wintrow or small little things and Etta. And he talks about, "Oh, would you want a story? I've recalled a lovely old tale from the Southlands. Would you like to hear it?" "Very well, then. This is an old tale from a time before Jamelia. Some say it is a tale from the cursed shores that was told in the Southlands and eventually claimed as their own." He cleared his throat. He half closed his eyes, and when he spoke in his mother's words, in the cadence of the storyteller, as she had spoken so long ago before Ygritte cut out her tongue, slicing her words away forever. "Once in that distant time so long ago, there was a young woman, of good wit but small fortune. Her parents were elderly, and when they died, what little they had would be hers. She might, perhaps, have been content with that, but in their dotage they decided to arrange a marriage for their daughter. The man they chose was a farmer, of good fortune but no wit at all. The daughter knew at once she could never find happiness with him, nor even tolerate him. So Adrilla, for that was her name, left both parents and home, and Erlida was her name, dolt." Vivacia twisted slowly to look back at him. The movement sent a jolt of ice up Kennit's spine. She turned sinuously, her body unbound by human limitations. Her hair was suddenly jet black, shot with silver gleams. The golden eyes that met his gaze, the faint gleams of the ship's lantern, and threw the light back to him. When she smiled at him, her lips parted too widely, and the teeth she showed him seemed both whiter and smaller than before. Her lips were too red. The life that moved in her now glittered with a serpent's sheen. Her voice was throaty and lazy. "If you must bore me with a tale 1,000 years old, at least tell it well." His breath caught hard in his throat. He started to speak, then caught himself. Be silent. Make her talk. Let her betray herself to him first. The creature's gaze on him was like a blade at his throat, but he refused to show fear. He did his best to meet her gaze and not flinch from it. "Erlida," she insisted. And it was not a farmer, but a riverside potmaker she was given to, a man who spent all his day patting wet clay. He made heavy, graceless pots, fit only for slops and chamber pots. That is how the tale goes, and I should know. I knew Erlida.
I love this little detail, this story that Kennit decides to tell to the dragon, not knowing he's telling it to the dragon. And it's actually of somebody the dragon knew.
And he annoys her enough where she has to respond.
Yeah. I do wonder if this partially helps bring her to the forefront. Maybe he really did help bring her back.
Yeah.
Back to life, in air quotes. Because
I think so.
yeah, I think it goes back to the magic of names and calling something to itself. And I know that he got the name wrong, but it's still a name of a real person that she knew. And so I think that's, again, strengthening those memories of herself. And
the other idea of this, or the other thought you could have, is that the dragon was always there, but purposely playing dead. I don't know for what reason. And it doesn't make sense with what the dragon had said before. If like no one can be in control, then, no one will or whatever.
Right.
I don't know, but that's just the other thing that you can think about.
That's fair. It could also just be, once again, Kennit's luck working out for him, where the dragon finally wrestled control.
Right.
And so she's now back. I don't know.
Kennit demands, "How did you know, or how could you possibly know, Erlida?" And the figurehead says, "Because we are not as stupid as humans who forget everything that befell them before their individual births. The memory of my mother and my mother's mother and her mother's mother's mother are all mine. They were spun into strands from memory sand and the saliva of those who helped encase me in my cocoon. They were set aside for me, my heritage, for me to reclaim when I awoke as a dragon. The memories of 100 lifetimes are mine, yet here I am encased in death, No more than wistful thinking. I don't understand, Kennit ventured stiffly. That is because you are stupid, she snapped bitterly. No one, he had once vowed to himself, would ever speak to him like that again. Then he had cleansed their blood from his hands, and he had kept that promise to himself, always. Even now. Kennit drew himself up straight. Stupid. You may think me stupid, you may call me stupid. At least I am real, and you are not. He tucked his crutch under his arm and prepared to lurch away. She turns back to him and is smiling like, oh, you do have bite after all.
Yes, she's
Interesting.
amused.
So, speak to me then, pirate. You think I am not real? I am real enough to open my seams and drown everyone here.
You might wish to think on that. Yeah, so I don't know. Dealing with the dragon is a lot different than dealing with Vivacia.
Yes, and Kennit is in his element, but he has not dealt with dragons before, so he does underestimate and make some judgment errors in this conversation. We'll see that coming up, but he's kind of in his element, you know?
Yeah.
The wresting control and who's more powerful and coming
Yeah.
out on top in this verbal sparring.
Exactly. So his instincts of not being a great person kind of help him with this because the dragon doesn't care. The dragon's like, yeah, okay, sure.
Like, show me what you got, you know?
Yeah.
So he once again insults the dragon here. Oh, boasts and brags, Vivacia was braver than you, whatever you are. You take refuge in the bully's first strength, what you can destroy. Destroy us all then. When you are sunk in wreck on the bottom, I wish you much joy of the experience. And then he turns and walks away from her. And he had to walk away now because he insulted her. He said, like, do it. But if you turn back, she's not going to respect him then, right? And that's his whole thought. It might work with a human. But as he's walking away...
she rocks the boat.
Yes.
And he falls. Kennit falls because he loses balance. And so he's sprawled out on the floor.
And a small voice speaks to him.
The tiny wizardwood charm strapped to his wrist spoke abruptly. Don't walk away, you fool. Never turn your back on a dragon. If you do, she will think you are so stupid that you deserve destruction. And should I trust you? He grunted. He managed to sit up. You're a bit of dragon yourself if what she says is true. There are dragons and dragons. This one would just as soon not spend eternity tied to a heap of bones. Turn back, defy her, challenge her. Shut up, he hissed at the useless thing. What did you say to me? The ship demanded in a poisonously sweet voice. So before we get to this misunderstanding that works out in Kennit's favor, why is the charm helping Kennit against his own kind?
I don't know, he doesn't want to die either.
Okay.
Probably doesn't want to see the dragon die.
Okay.
And force herself to sink to the bottom,
Yeah. I just think it's really interesting that every time Kennit's in trouble, the charm does help him.
They do have a bond. He is awakened with Kennit's life force a bit here.
Yeah.
And the charm does like the people on board. I think the bond does, or the charm does have an affinity for the dragon that is newly awakened. It's the first time that they've seen someone of their previous kind.
Right.
Who has regained their memories.
Yeah.
So I think it's in the charm's best interest to
keep Kennit alive.
keep Kennit alive and make sure Kennit keeps the ship alive.
Okay.
He says, shut up to the charm, and then repeats it for the dragon. I said, shut up. Be wood if you have not the wit to be Vivacia. Vivacia? That spineless slave thing? That quivering, acquiescent, groveling creature of humans? I would be silent forever rather than be her. Kennit seized his advantage. Then you are not her. Not one whit of you was expressed in her. The figurehead reared her head back. If she had been a serpent, Kennit would have believed her ready to strike. He did not step back. He would not show fear. Besides, he did not think she could quite reach him. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes spun with anger. If she is not you, then she has as much a right to be the life of this ship as you do. And if she is you, well then, you mock and criticize yourself. Either way, it matters not to me. My offer to this live ship stands. I care little which of you takes it up. There, he put all of his coins on the table and he offers that his choice. And the dragon is interested.
He would either win or be ruined. There was nothing else between those extremes, but then there never had been. So we really get to the heart of who Kennit is in that statement, I think, where you either win or you lose. And he wants to be a winner. And that's how he that black and white thinking is how he goes through life and how he makes all his decisions.
I think the next part here gives a point to my theory of the dragons not quite being awakened underneath live ships yet. Because she doesn't know about the offer, and Kennit smiles and says, "What offer? You mean you don't know? Dear, dear, I thought you had always been lurking beneath Vivacia's skin. It appears that instead you are rather newly awakened."
That's, yeah.
But he again resays his offer to this newly awakened dragon ship. "Pirate with me, be my queen of the seas. If dragon you truly are, then show me that nature. Let us pray where we will and claim all these islands as our own." Despite her haughty stare, he had seen the brief widening of her eyes that betrayed her interest. Her next words made him smile. "What's in it for me? What do you want?" She sizes him up, running her eyes over all of him, and he waits her out. "I want what I want, and when I want it. When the time comes for me to take it, I'll tell you what it is." He threw her words down as a challenge. "Oh my." He tugs at his mustache as if amused, but inside he's kind of chilled by her words. "Can you truly expect me to agree to your terms?" And then it was her turn to laugh because she says, "Of course you will accept those terms, for what other course is available to you? As little as you wish to admit it, I can destroy you and all your crew any time it pleases me. You should be content with knowing that it amuses me to pirate with you for a time. Do not seek more than you can grasp."
I do just want to quickly point out that Kennit saying he doesn't care who is the life force behind the live ship, he just wants a live ship, is pretty bold, considering he was trying to woo Vivacia and told Vivacia that she's special and he loves her. And now he's just like, "Nah, I don't care if Vivacia comes back or not. As long as you want to be my pirate queen, let's go."
He's got to play to both sides.
That's true.
Whoever comes out on top,
I guess. And
it feels like they can't understand what's happening underneath if the dragon didn't know about the offer. So in his eyes, he's doing the best he can. Yeah.
So the dragon makes her offer. And
Kennit is kind of forced to accept.
Yeah. He doesn't admit right away that he's going to accept, though.
Right. He tries to convince her again, like, "Hey, destroy me and you destroy yourself. Nothing can happen. But with me, you can hunt across the waters again. If the old legends be true at all, that should more than amuse you." "So, you accept my terms?" She chuckled again. He straightens. "So, I take a night to think about it." "You accept, then," she said to the knight. And now he turns to go. He nods to the deckhands, doesn't know if they had overheard anything. But as he crosses the main deck, he finally allowed himself to feel his triumph. He had done it. He had called the ship back to life, and she would serve him once more. He thrust away her side of the bargain. What could exist that she could want for herself? She had no need to mate, nor eat, nor even sleep. What could she demand of him that he would not easily grant her? It was a good agreement. "Wiser than you know," said his own voice in small. "A pact for greatness, even." "Is it?" muttered Kennit. Not even to his good luck charm would he risk showing his elation. "I wonder, the more so in that you endorse it." "Trust me," suggested the charm. "Have I ever steered you wrong?" "Trust you and trust a dragon," Kennit retorted softly. He looks around and then brings his wrist to eye level. Does Wintrow have the right of it? Are you a leftover bit of a stillborn dragon? An instant of silence, more telling than any words. And if I am, the charm asked smoothly, do I not still bear your own face? Ask yourself this. Do you conceal the dragon, or does the dragon conceal you? Kennit's heart lurched in his chest. Some trick of the wind made a low moaning in the rigging. It stood Kennit's hair on end. You make no sense, he muttered, and then continues on. Why do you think that got to him?
I think potentially because of Paragon.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, that he knows that Paragon helped him so much, and that means that a dragon helped him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So is the dragon holding part of him hostage in Paragon now, and he has to barter with Paragon in the future, or is his memories concealing the dragon on Paragon?
Yeah,
Something to think about, and he has to think about.
definitely.
Because Paragon has his secrets.
Yeah, Paragon does have a secret.
So does he have to barter with another creature, another dragon in the future to keep his secrets? It's a scary thought for somebody who holds his secrets very highly.
Yes, that's true. And then we finish up this chapter with She Who Remembers.
A lot of perspective shifts in this chapter.
Yeah, especially just a short little time spent with She Who Remembers, who is still following Vivacia and is really having a hard time here.
Mm-hmm.
Her voice was rusty. She had sung before to herself in the maddening confinement of the cave pool. Shrill and cracked had her voice been, crashing her defiance against the stone walls and iron bars that bound her. But this was different. Now she lifted her voice in the night and sang out the ancient song of summoning. Come, it said to anyone who might hear. Come, for the time of gathering is nigh. Come to share memories. Come to the journey together, back to the place of beginnings. Come. It was a simple song meant to be joyous. It was meant to be shared by a score of voices. Sung alone, it sounded weak and pathetic. So here we have She Who Remembers trying to summon people to her, or serpents to her, trying to fulfill her role, but she's still alone.
And she's reflecting on how she's still following this ship because she feels a slight sense of kinship, maybe, but she doesn't understand how that could be.
Yeah.
And she takes in air to sing again. Come, join your kin and lend strength to the weaker ones. Together, together we journey back to our beginnings and our endings. Gather, shorebound creatures of the sea, to return to the shores yet again. Bring your dreams of sky and wings. Come to share the memories of our lives. Our time has come. Our time has come. She remembers, waits for an answer, but nothing came. Again, it's these sections with She Who Remembers are filled with a loneliness and just a solitude that is very, very sad.
Yeah.
She sank disconsolately beneath the waves once more, and it seemed to her that the toxins that trailed elusively from the ship ahead of her took on a more substance and flavor. I mock and tease myself, she chided herself. Perhaps she was truly mad. Perhaps she had returned to freedom only to witness the end of all her kind. Desolation wrapped her and tried to bear her down. Instead, she fell back into her position behind the ship to follow where it would lead her. But the dragon is woken up in Vivacia now and in control, so maybe there's a little bit more communication in the future.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that She Who Remembers keeps saying that there are some sort of toxins coming from the ship. They're faint, but it is happening. Because where are the toxins coming from?
I think their word for toxins is literally just
memories.
Yeah, it's like the silver, the essence of who they are.
Okay.
Because they have to take time to regenerate them. They have to take time to, they use stronger ones versus weak ones. I think it's in conjunction with what you're saying that memories are power. I think it physically is for them sometimes too. And it's yes, there actually are toxins and it's like a liquid that they can shake onto people from their rough. But in the terms of a live ship, I think it's just the dragon being awake and having more of those memories kind of be at the forefront of who this is,
Okay.
the essence of that creature. And it's kind of like effusing the water around it a bit
Right.
more.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, either way, lots happened.
Yeah. Emma and I were discussing this before after we finished and read the chapter,
Mhm.
just briefly, that we had both forgotten that Vivacia dies for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that Bolt took over. And again, it's not Bolt yet, but the
Yeah.
dragon part has taken over. I remember that happened. I just didn't remember that she died for a second.
Yeah, I don't remember the Vivacia just all of a sudden becoming Deadwood.
Yeah.
Which feels like a pretty big shocker. So I don't know why I
Right.
wouldn't have remembered that.
It just happens over like a paragraph and then it's done a half a page later or something.
Yeah, so maybe that's part of it. She comes back and so you're like, ooh, phew. But yeah, I didn't remember this chapter coming
different
into
colored hair, different colored eyes,
it. Yeah.
different looking skin, bright red lips, mouth too
Well,
wide.
Are her eyes what color were her eyes before?
I don't remember. But
I don't
this time they turned green with a black at the center, and then now when she woke up, I think they were reflecting the gold from the light, but they didn't say what color they were. So
Mhm. Also, she would have had black hair before because the Vestrits all have black hair.
yeah, but it's black streaked with silver.
That's true. That part is different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And she's moving like a serpent, not like a
That
human is restricted.
Freaks me out. I don't
Yeah.
want to even try to picture.
I just am picturing like the uncanny valley, like straight up uncanny valley,
Yeah.
human shaped, but
I'm thinking of that one video
kind of like a Medusa,
okay.
like a Gorgon kind of is
Yeah.
depicted.
I'm thinking of that video of Benedict Cumberbatch in the body movement capture suit whenever he was
mocap
doing
for Smaug.
Yeah, for Smaug, for The Hobbit. That's what I'm picturing. A lot of like undulating body movements.
What about Raygun? Breakdance.
Yes. Australian breakdancer Raygun.
Mm-hmm. That's the movements
That's the movement.
that Vivacia is doing.
Yep. I agree. Oh.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have thoughts on this chapter on how dragons are in live ships, are they always aware and kind of fighting? Are the memories directly related to their power and awakening? Just let us know what you think about that. It's an interesting topic to think on, and there's enough there to speculate, but not quite enough to draw conclusions, so it's perfect for theories.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll love to hear yours.
Yeah. You can email us at isfitshappy@gmail.com, or you can, I don't know, you can DM us and message and comment on any of our social medias, or Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, Threads, all those. YouTube.
TikTok.
Send us anything you want. That's right. We're on TikTok too. I forgot about that. We got the one posted, I think.
We have like two.
Two? We got two
Maybe
posted.
3.
We got 3 posted. Emma's in charge of it, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah. I don't really make a ton of them, clearly. But
Thank you so much for tuning in.
thanks. See you guys next week. All right, time for the best part. What you guys have brought to our attention. And this week we're going to start with an email we got from Jonas. And this email is about Ronica.
Mm-hmm.
So Jonas writes in to talk about how Ronica is awesome and the MVP for standing up to Cirilla.
Yep. And this is like Ronica at her most powerful and her most badass.
Yes. Yeah. And how definitely there's sympathy for Cirilla, but the way she's handling things is awful. So,
Yeah.
Agreed. And then also, Jonas has a theory about my theory on serpents not having
Serpents' diets.
yes, the serpents diets and dragon diets for that matter.
Yeah.
But
When we were talking how serpents were growing dull because they were absorbing memories from fish for so long.
yes, that was my theory.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonas says I assume the serpents eating fish and turning them slowly is a lot different from dragons because this is supposed to be a temporary stage and they haven't fully matured and evolved yet. Dragons eating deer and getting their memories doesn't get in the way. Serpents, I just assume, are not meant to dwell for centuries and they do lose their own memories and soak up more and more of the fish and swimming mammals, perhaps. Tinfoil hat theory, Malkin has more complex thoughts because he has a dolphin diet and not fish.
Could possibly be true.
I am obsessed with that tinfoil hat theory, so that's
funny.
Canon for me.
They just save all the dolphins from Malkin.
Yes, Malkin gets the dolphins. No, I like the idea that it's because they're not fully formed.
Yeah, and dragons have like an established identity.
Yeah, and so I like that it wouldn't matter as much to the dragon.
And I guess serpents don't really have all of their memories yet. And when dragons do hatch and they eat, regular animals and maybe absorb their memories, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the centuries and centuries of lifetimes that they've had as dragons.
Yeah. And I think especially this past chapter that we just talked about for this episode, She Who Remembers,
the dragon of Vivacia.
Talks about how she has the memories of generations and generations in her that never got to be utilized. And so, I think it does. And then we have She Who Remembers. He's talking about giving back the memories to the serpents. So I think it does make sense that serpents just aren't fully formed yet. And it's much easier for them to forget, especially.
So thank you, Jonas.
Yeah, thank you, awesome. Jonas. Then we'll move over to Facebook, where we have a comment from Ellen for episode 209, which is part 1 of the Cyrilla and Ronica chapter.
We're kind of piggybacking off of Jonas's comments about Cyrilla's incompetence.
Yes, yeah. And Ellen says that she's slightly confused about Cyrilla's complete incompetence in actually leading. I'm grasping at a theory and wondering if Jamalia's governance is either full of officials that do all the actual stuff but don't have fancy titles and thus, quote, don't matter, or is so drenched in tradition that things mostly just run along by themselves. So that's the theory from Ellen. What are your thoughts?
In my readings of the books, I never got the impression that the companions were actually part of ruling or running things ever. I think they're literally just scholars. They never made decisions on things. They never, they literally were only hired to research their particular topic and give advice when asked.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the people who actually run stuff, like the satrap, or if he had actual advisors,
council.
Yeah, exactly, they would make decisions. I truly think that Cyrilla literally has no experience running anything because she was never expected to. And her only touchstone for running things is Cosgo, really, because she was kind of young, and probably when the old satrap was alive, things just ran because he had been satrap forever.
Right. And I mean, to be honest, how often is the Bingtown companion getting called in for questions or debates or thoughts on what's going on? Because Bingtown kind of does run itself. So I don't imagine there was often times when the old satrap needed Cyrilla's help.
And Cyrilla says that he kind of forgot about Bingtown and didn't really care about it in his old age either.
Yeah.
So I don't think she was used very much in her official capacity.
Yeah.
So, Ellen, I really don't think the companions ever took on a role of ruling or leading or making decisions on anything. And the role itself has been changed when Satrap Cosgo came around to not even, have to be knowledgeable about their topics, really.
Well, they need to be knowledgeable.
Yes, about different other topics. But we don't know anything truly about Jamalia and how they run things besides that there is a satrap who rules, and he has advisors to call on, and some of them are called companions of the heart.
Right. It is kind of a weird system, though, I will say. I feel like heart companions, it doesn't really make sense to me because they're not wives. According to Cyrilla, originally, they're not supposed to be used for like carnal desires,
Yeah.
but they also are loyal to only the satrap and aren't really allowed to like get married or have kids. It's sort of like nuns in a way.
Yeah.
I guess like that's the idea that comes to my head, but it's like kind of odd. Then what's the point? I guess if they're not actually,
at that point, who knows?
I don't know, just odd. It seems odd to me, especially because we know that this society doesn't necessarily give women a whole lot of
That's not necessarily
not
true.
agency, but yeah, I guess. But like
That's more recent with the Chelsea influence we've heard throughout the books.
that's
I mean,
true, yeah.
it could be a little bit more uneven throughout the ages as well, and this is more leaning towards it with the Chelsea influence. Like that could be true, but we don't know for sure.
That's true.
They don't really say anything about that.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's the thoughts on that. Thank you, Ellen, for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think just Cyrilla feels like she is able to do it because she has seen it done, and she should hold power because she needs to hold power.
She's so smart.
Yeah, and she's so smart, and these are savages, and I just don't think she actually has it in her.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there is a big difference between being a scholar and a politician.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a lot of difference between those two. And on top of that, if I'm being honest, I feel like some of her ideas that she can lead and she is so much better than other people. Number one comes from a superiority thing of like, she was the only heart companion that got kept from the original satraps horde, and she didn't give her body over like the new heart companion, so she already feels like she's better than. And then on top of that, I think because she was so young with the other satrap, he probably like doted on her like a daughter. I don't think there was anything like weird going on. I think it was just he was doting on her like a daughter and probably made her feel important. And so then she equated that with being important. And like she did have a say in governments. And like, I don't know, like she was part of something more than what she actually was.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks again. So
thank you, Ellen.
We move on to some other comments on Facebook from the previous episode to that, episode 208 for chapter 5, when we were talking about
Althea, Brashen.
Yeah, and Paragon's
Lavoy.
philosophical musings. And I kind of said, like, somebody is going to know what philosopher talks about this kind of stuff. And Degenhardt made a comment that Jean-Paul Sartre's being and nothingness should be a possible answer to Paragon's philosophical musings. So thanks for that. But Degenhardt also talks about how the changes in the whites and how our conversation about if there is a white prophet per generation or if they have their own special task and who changes, do the whole race change at a certain time? And Degenhardt likes the idea that there is one prophet per generation and that only the fool is changing during these times, not Prilkop, not any of the servants, not, Illustor or any other white prophet wannabe. So it's just the one per.
Yeah, which is definitely interesting and would make sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And it feels a lot more mystical for the world, too. Just like, oh, I'm the chosen one.
Yeah, yeah.
I have this task to carry out.
Yeah, so thank you, Degenhardt. We also have a few Instagram messages. And there are some really interesting thoughts being brought to us there. First, we'll start off with Inku, who is on chapter 4 of Ship of Magic and had some thoughts. So I was talking about the description of the man who works in Bethel's brothel. Quote, has a visible scar on his face and moves with quiet grace. I thought that it was one of the assassins that were there for Kennit, but Inku was thinking, what if it could be a completely different assassin? And that they're not sure of the timeline, but didn't Fitz travel with Night Eyes somewhere near where live ship stuff happens? I mean, he probably did some work in different places while traveling, so it could be him. Or maybe it's just me hoping to see Fitz. But I find it strange how much Hobb describes a random man who never appears again and doesn't even have anything important to do. So, do we think this was Fitz?
I don't. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it is not. It's fun, though. Fun to imagine it would be him. But there's a lot of reasons I don't think it is.
I like to think that it could be. But yeah, I think timing-wise, technically he'd probably be back home with Hap at this point.
Yeah.
Also, I would be more convinced if there was like a big dog outside at any point.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's Night Eyes? He can't walk to Divvytown because it's in the middle of like a swamp area.
Yeah.
He did walk on the cursed shore, but he can't walk to Divvytown. I don't think he ever took a boat or a ship out of Bingtown. He just like walked to it and like kind of walked back. Because it never says that he has a ship. Because where would he put Night Eyes on that?
Yeah.
And also, I don't think he would ever hire himself out as a killer.
Yeah, that's fair.
And another thing, I don't think he would ever go into a brothel.
Okay. I don't know if I agree with that one because of his relationship with Starling. I think he still has needs, but like, I don't know.
But does he, except when Starling just shows up and is like, it's time?
I mean, I don't know.
Like, Fitz at this point is partially forged. Like, he doesn't have a lot of emotional range.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, he could, but he's never expressed an interest in it. He's never thought about that. Like, going to a brothel, I mean.
Well, okay.
Not in a sexual relationship.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just talking about, like, going to a brothel.
Literally sleeps with Starling. Like, on his way to saving his uncle. But I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, he hasn't really thought about, but he also hasn't like thought negatively about it ever, you know? It just wasn't
anyway,
on his
that's
radar,
like the most minor one out of my things that Fitz isn't there.
Okay. I feel like it potentially could be him, but I don't know if it matches up with timelines because I don't understand, to be fair, I don't understand where we are in the timeline at this point and where we're going to be at the next book. The passage of time in these books is an enigma to me, and I'm not very good at being able to like mentally keep track of the timeline, I guess.
At this point, Fitz should be back in the Six Duchies because Amber is already in Bingtown on the Rainwild Street, and we know that Fitz walked on the Rainwild Merchant Street when he was in Bingtown. They would have seen each other. Yeah. That's the way it works, you know?
Yeah.
Something like that would have happened. So pretty sure he's back. Hap is living with him at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, but I like the idea of it.
It'd be fun, but unfortunately, I just don't think it can line up. And I think Robin Hobb describing this person is just Robin Hobb making descriptions of people that are vivid.
It could also be that Kennit is so suspicious of everybody and it's a tool to show that he's suspicious because he's like looking at the crowd and like describing people that stand out. But
because he did get a warning from the beggar.
Yeah, so he is looking for somebody. So of course the guy with the scar on his face.
Unless this isn't when he got attacked and this is the first time he went to Bettel's brothel, which it might be if it's chapter 4.
Yeah.
So
either way. Thank you for bringing it up though. I like the idea. Yeah. I don't discount it. Thank you, Inku. Then we also got a message from Peculiar Ponies. And they have written in to say
that they're talking about the dragon hatching and absorbing the memories from the cocoons, because we weren't exactly sure what happened in the Rainwild, and we thought that they ate the cocoons to get the memories. And Peculiar Ponies just listened to them recently.
Yeah, and so the whole thing was whenever we just had that chapter with Rain watching Tintaglia hatch, at no point is it said that she eats the cocoon, but we thought that there was that mention of eating the cocoon
somewhere
in the Rainwilds. So Peculiar Pony says the dragons there partially absorb the cases. The cases are melting and giving off the stench. And Santara mentions that the case is being partially absorbed before she eats it. but they don't absorb all the way. What isn't absorbed is eaten by the dragons. So I assume they are meant to be absorbed like Tintaglia, but since they're a bit stunted, it doesn't absorb all the way.
Yeah,
And
which is interesting. So maybe it just didn't spend long enough in the heat of the summer to bake all the way through or something. And because it's not fully cured, I guess, it doesn't dissolve.
Yeah, and we do know that they get to the hatching grounds late or later in the season than they should. And I think Tintaglia and the ship are both a little bit nervous about how much time they'll have in the cocoon.
Yeah.
But it's better than nothing.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that's a really good theory that maybe they just weren't fully formed.
They're supposed to be absorbed, but because they're, stunted, they have to eat it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, thank you. Then we have one last Instagram message from Hayden. They might not get to this point for a while because they're on episode 89, which is a while ago.
Yes.
But it's just a brief, fun thing to bring up because they brought up a conversation we had in episode 89 talking about Realm of the Elderlings tattoos.
Yes.
And it has a few.
I do have a few. And Hayden says that they have an idea to get silver prints that Beloved has put on Fitz's wrists, that Beloved and Fitz have on their wrists. So I thought that was really cute, a little silver fingerprint.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm not an expert in tattoos at all. And I think it would be cool, but I think it would be like really hard to show up and know what it is. But I guess you would know what it is.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point, right? Like Fitz is, I don't know, it looks like smudge.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever, so
silver smudges.
No, I think it's a really cool tattoo idea. But yeah, I don't know. I just love tattoos though. So
I'm planning on getting more too.
Yeah. I've been working on my leg sleeve of Realm of the Elderling.
Just in its infancy at this point.
It is in its infancy because I'm going, whenever we finish a series, I add a main character for the next trilogy. So right now I have Beloved and I have a serpent. So those are the first two trilogies we've been through, even though we're not done with this one. The next I'll get Night Eyes. I feel like he's important for the next trilogy. Then I'll get a dragon and then Fitz. So
yeah. Interesting. It's gonna be cool when it's done, and they're all different styles too.
In
so
20
far.
years.
In 20 years, yeah.
But yeah.
Again, another call out. Let us know if you have tattoos or ideas for tattoos about the series.
Yeah.
I always like to see art and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, thanks everybody who wrote in. We love hearing from you guys, whether it's an idea about a current chapter, a past chapter, or ideas on how things make sense from what we're reading now to what happens in the future. We really enjoy getting your theories and thoughts. So we'll look forward to them next week as well. See you then.